John, the 11th chapter. When Mary came where Jesus was and saw him, she knelt at his feet and said to him, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." When Jesus saw her weeping and the Jews who came with her also weeping, he was greatly disturbed in spirit and deeply moved. He said, "Where have you laid him?" Then they said, "Lord, come and see." Jesus began to weep. So the Jews said, "See how he loved him." But some of them said, "Could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying?" Then Jesus, again greatly disturbed, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone was lying against it. Jesus said, "Take away the stone." Martha, the sister of the dead man, said, "Lord, already there is a stench because he has been dead 4 days." Jesus said, "Did I not tell you that if you believe, you would see the glory of God?" So they took away the stone. Jesus looked upward and said, "Father, I thank you for having heard me. I know that you always hear me, but I have said this for the sake of the crowd standing here, so that they may believe that you sent me." And when he had said this, he cried with a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out!" And the dead man came out, his hands and feet bound with strips of cloth, and his face wrapped with a cloth. And Jesus said to them, "Unbind him and let him go." The Gospel of the Lord. Today's Gospel is both comforting and troubling. It's comforting because it has a happy ending. And it's a foretaste of the feast to come. It points to that first lesson that was read today and the second lesson from Revelation, where the writer says, God will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death will be no more. Mourning and crying and pain will be no more, for the former things have passed away. Behold, I make all things new. We often read this gospel at funerals because it is comforting and because it does remind us of the resurrection. But it can also be troubling because it asks a very difficult question. Could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying? I wonder, when we read this gospel at funerals, how many people ask themselves that same question. This is All Saints Sunday, the Sunday of the year that we especially remember those saints who have died in the faith, those who have died in the past year. And we remember that death, in general, is a fact of life. But when it touches us, it also becomes a factor in faith. You know, Monday through Friday, I visit patients in the intensive care unit. And hardly a day goes by that a patient or family member doesn't ask me that same question in other words. Chaplain, why me? Why my mom or my dad? My husband or my wife? Or the hardest question of all, why my child? is able. He opened the eyes of the blind. He made the lame to walk. He raised Lazarus from the dead. Why can't he spare me or my loved one? When the facts of life become a factor in our faith, what's comforting can also be troubling. Surely God is able. The question isn't so much about God's power, it's really about God's will. And that's a much more troubling and difficult question to ask. But let's step back for a moment and think about this. What did Jesus really do for Lazarus, Mary, and Martha? Yes, we know how the story ends. He raised Lazarus from the dead. But think about it. He didn't spare Lazarus from death. Because Lazarus, as a human being, still one day died. Mary and Martha one day died. You and I one day will die. We used to say that there are two things in life that are certain. What are they? Right, and we learned this election year that that's not entirely true for 47% of the American population. But one thing is 100% true for every single person. We will one day die. Now we hope that day is a long time off. We hope for a long and happy and healthy life. You know, today is All Saints Sunday. It was 2 years ago today that my mom died. She was almost 95. She lived a very long and a mostly healthy and a mostly happy life. So we were able to commend her to God's care and give thanks. We don't know how long, how, or when our lives will end. We simply know that basic fact of life. They will. Like Lazarus, you and I will one day die. And in a few months, you're going to return to this church on a Wednesday, and you're going to come forward, and the pastor is going to put ashes on your forehead, and he's going to say, or she's going to say, remember that you are dust, and to dust you will return. That is a fact of life. I heard a story about a preacher who went into a bar. And he said to the men who were in there drinking, he said, who here wants to go to heaven? If you want to go to heaven, put down your drink, stand up, and follow me. And everybody in the bar put down their drink, and they stood up, except for one guy at the end of the bar. He just sat there drinking his beer. And the preacher said, son, don't you want to go to heaven? Well, sure I want to go to heaven. When I die, I thought you were taking up a group to go there right now. You know, we all want to live a long life, right? We want to live a healthy life, a happy life. But I don't think that's what today's gospel is really about. Because at best, Jesus gave Lazarus more time. He extended his life, but he didn't spare him from death. We want to live a long, happy life. And we are living longer and healthier than people before us. Because of diet, because of exercise, because of medicine. You know, I see people every day that leave the hospital that a generation or two ago would not have left the hospital. And they're going home to good lives. They're going home to new health. They're going home, and God willing, will have healthy, happy, long lives in spite of the illnesses or disease that brought them there. But I also see people whose lives are being extended, but not better. People that we don't have the power to save. People for whom they and the family have to wrestle with those difficult questions about, well, what is life really? And quality of life. And it's never easy. And there usually isn't a right or necessarily a good choice, but we do the best that we can. And we trust that God's will be done. And here's where we come back to today's gospel. Because I don't think at its root the gospel is really about Jesus bringing Lazarus back to life. I don't think it's about Jesus giving him more days on this earth. Because if that's all it is, then Mary and Martha can take comfort for the moment. Because it's a temporary joy. I don't want a temporary joy. I don't want to kick the can down the road when I know that I'm still going to kick the bucket one day. I want a lasting joy. I don't want to simply extend life. I want eternal life. I don't want to cheat death. I want to conquer death. And I think that's what today's gospel is all about. Jesus raises Lazarus from the tomb as a sign of things to come. It's a little foretaste of the feast that we're all going to enjoy one day in the kingdom. It begins with Christ's resurrection, and it points to our own resurrection. Not to save our tears for another day, but to wipe away the tears completely. When death shall be no more, and God will make all things new. Today's gospel is a foretaste of the feast to come, when all the saints, those who have gone before us, we who live today, and the saints who will follow us, when all the saints will gather at the kingdom in the feast that has no end.